The $1,200, I said, can I take that and, basically buy a squeegee ladder and a bucket and start a window cleaning company? Knew nothing about window cleaning, and we bid on the scaffolding, and we got the scaffolding contract, and we had no clue what we're doing, and we didn't own any scaffolding. Now, when we start businesses, we purposely don't hire anybody from that industry because we want to come at it almost like with a
nice.
Totally fresh perspective. Wow. One of our kids, Nicholas, passed away. It was drug related. And that totally changed everything. Like, all I could do in terms of functioning was either be in bed, have a hot bath, or go for a long walk, because the anxiety was just wild in my body.
Welcome to the Living Richly podcast. It's so great to have you join us. We are so excited today to have a special guest with us, Steve Cody, an incredible story you're about to hear of a guy, an entrepreneur who has just absolutely done so much. Steve, it's great to have you here with us.
Thank you very much for having me on. Yeah. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, so you started out as an entrepreneur when you were a teenager. I think in your own words, it was like when you were 15 years old.
Yeah.
It was you, a bucket, a
squeegee,
and $1,200.
Yeah, $1,200.
And you started washing windows. What a lot of people don't know is that's my very first job.
Really?
And my first was
way.
a guy whose name was also Steve White, who started White's window washing, and I was doing that around the age of 16, I think.
So we might have been competitors.
So we were competitors at the time.
Way to go promoting his competitor on the show that he's a guest on. Wait a second.
I don't think White's window washing is in business anymore. So nor is Cody washing.
Of course they are.
Absolutely. Hey, come on.
over
So I'll just take over hosting now.
Over 36 years. I mean, you have built an empire of businesses, over 20 businesses, I believe, in those 36 years or 35 years, over $750 million in revenue. I mean, my God, you have had your hand in so many different kind of pies, different businesses, different events and stuff like that. It's been an incredible journey for you.
Yeah. It's amazing to look back, and we live at Lansdowne now. And so much of kind of what we built is down there. This Cody Window Cleaning is down there. They clean the windows. So it's in the truck all the time. I don't know the new owner. It's been 2 owners since we had it. We've got Bobcats rolling around down there all the time. So we had the Bobcat dealership. We had bought it out of bankruptcy. We got lifts down there. The Cattle Castle, that was our first scaffolding job. So anyways, it just brings back a lot of memories.
We've got listeners from all over the world, but certainly a lot of them from Ottawa, and you start describing some of those areas. And of course they'll be like, oh, that's him. That's him. Yeah.
There's not much in Ottawa that Steve hasn't touched in one way or another,
hasn't done. And so you've got all these businesses, and then you've gone also through some personal tragedies and we'll get into that and talk a bit more. But in 2013, you and your wife went through an incredibly difficult time and a difficult season, and that led you into some advocacy work and certainly some support work. There's just an incredible story of resilience, and so excited to be getting into it with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here.
Yeah, great to have you here. Tell us a little bit. I mean, I'm always curious about the origin story, right? Like here you are, an accomplished entrepreneur now. People know of your work in the city. You've accomplished so many great things, but tell us a little bit about your background and what actually, like when we talk about the 15 years old with a squeegee in your hand and $1,200 in your pocket, what drew you to that life? Like, so many people are afraid of that life, and yet you are a kid, drawn to kind of start your own thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't entrepreneurship. I don't even think was a word then.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I got to make some money.
Yeah.
So, grew up with a single mother. We moved around every year, maybe 2 years. So moved around all of Ottawa. My mother cleaned houses for a living. I went with her to clean those houses. So I think that's where it was set in. You do some work, there's some cash on the table, and you're paid at the end of the job. And that's kind of all I really knew growing up. And my grandfather, he was pretty determined I'd go to university. So he'd put, I think it was $20 a month in the bank. It was either 10 or 20. Every month he'd put it in the bank. So by the time I was in grade 10, this was $1,200. And I was very dyslexic. We didn't even know what dyslexia was at that time, right? So school was not for me. And I was with a bunch of guys. I was on a Sunday and talking to one guy. He said, "What do you do?" "I'm a window cleaner." "Window cleaner? Like people get their windows clean?" Yeah. "Oh yeah, we're really busy." And so anyways, I kind of thought about that. And I went to my grandfather. I said, the $1,200, I said, can I take that and, basically buy a squeegee ladder and a bucket and start a window cleaning company? Knew nothing about window cleaning. And my grandmother's actually the one who told him he had to do it because he was, he wanted me to go to school. But anyways, got the $1,200, quit school in grade 10 and started a window cleaning company.
Wow.
And then I found out I was scared of heights.
Oh, no.
I was going to say, because I remember we would do, when I was doing that at that age.
Oh, that's amazing.
And of course, it's such a different world back then, right? Safety regulations and rules. I mean, we were doing houses
there
in
was
the
no
glebe.
Safety.
No, we were doing houses in the glebe where you had, your ladders were, on roofs, it was just wild. I think the idea that we survived those days of washing windows in some of those places, but to be afraid of heights would have even been.
It was brutal.
Wow.
Yeah, it was brutal. And I remember like the first high rise, like this was on residential. I was scared of heights going up the ladder. Like this was a problem. But then we got into commercial and started doing high rises. Right. And I'd kind of recruited my high school buddy, Chris. And I remember he was so mad at me. Why the hell did, we'd be coming down these swing stages, coming down the side of buildings and the wind would be taking us out. And our safety line was tied to like a stair.
Yeah.
We had no idea. There was no safety. There was no roof anchors. Yeah. And anyways.
Wow.
So I think I was scared, so I had to hire people. So here I am now hiring kind of 30, 40-year-olds. Yeah. And, like you're 15, 16. So it was like probably one of the best learning experiences. Oh, because it's a tough hire, right? Like to be doing that. And you don't get paid what you should get paid. So, So anyways, I learned a lot for sure.
What a great, I did not know that about your story, about you being afraid of heights, but I mean, that just makes the story even better, to be honest, because we just had Naz Ahmed, which I know Naz, Naz, and also an entrepreneur that's done some amazing things. And he told the stories of fears he had to overcome. And a lot of the folks that watch the show, part of why they watch it is because of its message about following your heart and not just living life according to other people's expectations, that supposed life that society, family, all of it sort of imposes on you. And yours is certainly a story of following your heart. And it, the first one was the window washing company. You'd go on to launch a number of things. Fast forward a little bit into your journey. I'm always fascinated, not just by the origin story, but the shifts in mindset that you must have gone through. I mean, overcoming, I was afraid of heights, so I hired people to do it for me. I mean, I love that. But what were some of those shifts in mindset in those early years of your journey?
Yeah. And when you think about those years, like what makes it really easy is you have nothing to lose, right? You only have something to gain. And I often think about that. Like it's a lot easier to start building when you have nothing to lose. When we sold our first big company, our first big sale, I froze. I froze for about a year because now I had something to lose. Wow. So, there's if you think about mind shift. So anyways, so we had the window cleaning company. We're renting these machines, swing stages that bring you down the side of buildings. And we rented them a couple of times and I'm thinking, this is kind of dumb. Like maybe I should buy them and I'll rent them out. And then back then you had, like, where do you buy this stuff? So you literally go to the library or
Amazon.
No, there's no Amazon. And
there's no Ruckify where you can rent them.
Nothing. So you literally go to the library and you're looking for swing stage suppliers. I remember doing that. I was actually at the Barhaven Library. Couldn't find anything. So then the next thing was, I'm going to go to Toronto. And I'd never been to Toronto. So my friend and I get in the car, go to Toronto, and you're driving around Toronto. You're looking up in the air because you're looking for these machines. You want to get the names and then call the manufacturers. And it's exactly what I did. I got a hold of a company named Spider. They were out of Seattle. We became their national dealer. And so that got us into swing stages.
Wow.
So that was kind of the next thing. Then we're we got the swing stages going. Now we're renting scaffolding, right? So because to cover the sidewalks and things like that. And I talked about the cattle castle at the time. That was the biggest restoration project going on in Ottawa. And one of the guys says, we should bid on the scaffolding. I'm like, well, we don't even own any scaffolding,
Right.
So anyways, we bid on the scaffolding. And we got the scaffolding contract, and we had no clue what we're doing, and we didn't own any scaffolding. There were two competitors that had bid against us, and I had to go to them to get the scaffolding.
Oh,
I'm
no.
like, Steve, how do you have the nerve to come in here and ask me to? Because I said, I got to get the scaffolding. I got to make 20 points, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that all worked out really well. So that got us in the scaffolding business.
That's crazy.
Yeah, incredible when you think about it. And we often hear people where they wait until they've figured everything out before they act. And one of the things, yeah, exactly, right?
In hindsight,
my wife wishes,
Right, yeah. And Naz talked about that where he said when he was on the show, he said he had just posted even about this notion of just fucking do it. Like just
start.
Stop.
And then figure it out.
Stop waiting till everything is lined up and every answer is there. And it sounds like you've kind of lived your life by that model.
Yeah. In a bit, and we purposely, now when we start businesses, we purposely don't hire anybody from that industry, because we want to come at it almost like with a
nice.
totally fresh perspective.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
When we started Cody Party Rentals, knew nothing about party rentals. All I knew is my mom got married, and I had a really bad experience renting chairs and tables and things like that. So I said, I think I can create a better experience. So I would literally, again with my wife, we would drive to Toronto, Montreal, and I'd go in the back door of the party rental companies and talk to the employees, kind of until you got thrown out. But I learned from them, but we didn't hire anybody from the industry. So we just kind of, took what we thought was good and then went with it. And I don't know.
Again, it's so fascinating to hear you talk about how just about every venture you've mentioned started with you just seeing a need and then meeting a need. And then that opened up another door and you saw another opportunity. Yeah. You stepped through that, and opportunity after opportunity led you to, again, 20 companies later, $750 million in lifetime sales. Like, that is so impressive. But a lot of folks are afraid of just even taking that first step. One, how am I going to do it? I'm not sure how this is going to unfold. Fear is a real thing. How do you, when you think about that, where did fear show up for you, other than being afraid of heights? And how did you cope with that throughout your journey?
I think fear, I can remember 2 times in my life. So when we sold, we sold our equipment rental company to Hertz, which was owned by the Ford Motor Company. So it was my goal to be a millionaire by the time I was 30. On my 30th birthday, we had driven to New York to the Hertz headquarters to sign the paperwork to sell the company. So literally on my birthday, my wife had planned a surprise birthday party for me. So we had to drive back. We're way too cheap to fly, right? So anyways, we drove back for that. We didn't get there till about midnight, but that was, so after we sold that company, I was like that. Now I had something to lose. So I was paralyzed.
Right.
And,
how'd you move through that? Like you said, when you're paralyzed, how did you get unparalyzed and get back into motion?
Yeah. So I took a year, traded stocks, and I think I probably broke even, luckily. I think at the end, luckily. Right?
Yeah, that's doing okay in that world, right?
Yeah. And I haven't traded a stock since.
Yeah. Smarter people. Let the smart people do that.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's when my mother got married, and that kind of got me out of the funk. But I was just looking at all these ideas and all these opportunities, and just always getting paralyzed by overthinking them.
Right.
And I think that was that really, just having that bad experience renting.
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, I guess I'll go in that direction.
It almost got you back to your roots in some ways, in terms of getting back to that. There's a need. I think I can do better. And stepping through that door. Yeah.
And when I think about it, even when we started, so we're celebrating 25 years this year with Cody Party Rentals.
That's
but
amazing.
Even when we started, I didn't start with the same rawness.
Right.
And I think that rawness is like gold. We're just selling a rent anything territory to a guy that closes today in Pennsylvania. And I was telling Brad, the guy is so raw, and he's willing to go to anybody and ask anything to get it all. Like, I don't know, there's something special about rawness, like, and just you're fearless, right?
Right.
And yeah.
Well, it's the entrepreneur. You almost use you romanticize it with the pioneer spirit, right? I'm gonna blaze my own path. I'm going to find take the journey that no one else has taken, and you're right. That requires a certain rawness.
Like when we go on holidays and you're down in the Caribbean, whatever, I'll see a fish market, and I just love watching raw entrepreneur doing their thing.
Yeah.
It could be even at Lansdowne, like on a Sunday when they do the market thing, and you're just watching people hustle. And I don't know, there's something magical about that.
My guess is when you go driving somewhere, you purposely ignore your GPS.
Yeah.
I'm not turning left just because you told me
to. There's a company to see down.
Yeah, right.
We do that with the kids, literally. So we drive to Florida every year. You know, we have 5 kids, so we drive from here to Florida to get on a cruise ship, and we would literally stop at so many businesses, and we'd want to analyze them after. Like, we went into a Starbucks. I said, "Can I have your barista book?" We got the barista book, and read through it, and like, how was the service? How was it merchandised? And this is how listen to E-Myth.
This is how you learn.
Right?
This is how you learn.
And it was just like totally, I don't know. Anyways, that's our life.
I think again, it's fascinating that there are so many different ways to learn.
Yeah.
And in our society, again, we prize education, and education certainly has its place. I like you, I didn't go to college. I've got a Bible college degree, but I'm not sure how far that gets you in life. All right. But there's so many different ways to learn, whether it's through reading books or listening to a podcast, especially this one, right? Or doing what you did, which is talk to people that are doing cool shit and learn as much as you can. Because in that learning process, I think the learning, I don't know, you tell me, but I think the more you learn, it almost like fuels courage, right? Because
big time. Gives you confidence, right?
Right, because we fear what we don't know.
Yeah,
and so like part of, I think, getting unstuck might be like, start learning, start asking people questions, start looking for things that are going to feed your vision or feed that dream that you have, right?
And I don't even think, like, some people say, well, you need to be passionate about something before you get into it, or you can only be successful if you're passionate about it. There's not a lot of things that we've started that I've really been passionate about. Right. Party rentals, I'm not passionate about it. We had a Bobcat dealership. I don't even think I ever drove a Bobcat. So which is, it wasn't my thing. Right. But what gets you excited is what you're saying is learning about it.
Right.
So asking and learning and just what can I do with that? And I think that's what works for me.
Yeah, I love that.
It was interesting. And I recognize we're referencing Naz's episode. We really did enjoy some of the things he talked about. And of course, both of you being entrepreneurs, he talked about the idea that the more successful you are, the more you continue, as you get bigger in business and all of this, the more it's necessary that you're constantly growing and learning and kind of discovering about yourself in order to show up best in these companies at different stages. Maybe what's your take on that? How do you continue to stay fresh and curious and all of that?
Probably for myself, I think it's realizing what I love to do and what I'm good at. I was in a tech group with Naz.
Yeah.
And I just had lunch with the guy that ran it, Tim Redpath, great guy. And you'd be in the tech group, and it was a CEO tech group, and there'd be these guys in there, including Naz, like, they love being CEOs. And, they're like awesome CEOs.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, for me, that was a realization. I don't wake up like excited about being a CEO. Like, I love creating. I feel like it's an artist with a canvas, and you're creating something. You have to be the CEO, I guess. Like, but at some point and that's why we've created these companies and sold them, and they keep going, right?
Right.
Because there's great operators that do them. So it's not to say I don't like operating companies, but my passion is creating them.
It's creating. And I love the analogy to the artist there. What were some of them, when you go back and you look at the businesses that you started and you were at the helm of for at least those initial stages until the sale took place and the transition? What were some of the biggest challenges when you look back? What were like top 2 or 3 challenges or obstacles you had to face when you were building those companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was just talking to somebody about it, and it's kind of related to the CEO conversation. When we built our lift company, so the lifts are like booms and scissor lifts. You know, you get guys up 90 or 100 feet in the air type of thing.
Yeah, not me.
And
I'm with you. I'm with you. Heights are for someone else.
we were renting to a customer down at the Rideau Center, a big mall in Ottawa. And we were doing the Christmas decorations for a customer. And I happened to be there. And the customer's like, can you come up on the scissor lift and help me do something? I'm like,
nope.
He's like, are you joking?
No.
You own the company.
Yeah.
Anyways. So just getting back to the lift business. So we grew that business. I think it was like 2 years, grew it to $6 million. Net profit would have been $1 million the year we sold it. It was a great business. And I sold it because I was bored.
Mm-hmm.
And like, which is really stupid, right? Like, I think just hanging on to it, you could do really well in building that business. So for me, you talk about like some of the challenges I think is, and I've changed, I've recognized that. So I'd get bored of things and then sell them.
Yeah.
And they'd carry on, which is great. And I love that. But now I the importance of hanging on to it too.
Right.
So they're hard to build. Like they're so freaking hard.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint of heart, we say.
Oh, man.
So you're on this journey. It sounds like it's been an incredible journey of building businesses, of doing all of that, of all the excitement of building it, creating, building, all of that. We alluded to it at the beginning that in 2013, you had probably the most difficult moment for you and your wife, also on your birthday when this experience happened. Maybe talk to us and just share a little bit as you're comfortable in the story of your, kind of what went on in that time in the moment and the experience that you had in 2013.
Yeah, definitely realize a lot as an entrepreneur when that happens. So when we have significant tragedy in your life. So for us, just to kind of set where we were at, we had Cody Party. I think we had 9 franchises. We had built Monster Halloween, so it's a temporary Halloween business. We had about 26 locations that would open up for September, October. And we had just started Cody Mobile, so mobile auto detailing and different mobile businesses. And that was a franchise, and it was actually working quite well. And then on my birthday, like I said, we have 5 kids. One of our kids, Nicholas, passed away. It was drug related. And that totally changed everything. And at the time, you don't even realize it. So an entrepreneur, you've got all these balls in the air.
Yeah.
And the balls start falling. And you don't even know it. And, when I look back afterwards, it's like that whole, like all I could do in terms of functioning was either be in bed, have a hot bath, or go for a long walk. Cause the anxiety was just wild in my body. And, these balls are dropping, and, there starts to be some significant problems from a business standpoint. And Halloween was coming up. We had like tons of inventory, and so, we had to sell the companies, all 3 of them. So we ended up, it was really a fire sale. So everything we had built up until that period of time, we got, everybody like, you got to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way I'm doing that. So we got through it, but at the end of it, we had a significant amount of debt that we had to pay back. So, and, about a year and a half into it, I'd say, is kind of just going out for a walk one day, and I'm looking down. You're looking down at the path, and I know exactly where I was, and I just decided I'm going to look up. And I looked up, and I kind of saw the sky and everything through the trees, and that was the change of my mindset. Like why, how, but looking up, and so then I was kind of, okay, like, we got to get back on the horse here, and you got to provide for the family. And, but we had nothing left. So
I got chills when you use that language. So my partner, Wendy, and I, we have a phrase that we say to each other all the time, and it's always look up. And
interesting.
Yeah. So for you to say those exact words, I was like, ooh, there it is. And whenever we're, anything that you're looking at or whatever that might be, it's, hey, always look up. And it's a reminder to ourselves that, just exactly that. And so an incredible experience. I can imagine we had Janine Sharon on the show not that long ago, and she talked about the gift, seasons of silence. And she talked about the gift of silence and how that helped her through her bankruptcy and breast cancer and a bunch of the difficulties that she went through. Maybe just talk about that season of stillness, where you were processing that. And it sounds like, obviously a lot of things that were going on there, but what were some of the lessons that maybe you were learning? And as you began to look up again, what did you take from that made you different than before in how you went back into business?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to not having anything to lose, because now I had nothing to lose. I'd lost everything. Yeah. Right. We didn't go bankrupt. Right. But now we had nothing to lose. And when I look back, I'm like that was like almost like coming out of the water. Like it was it was very refreshing from an entrepreneur standpoint of view. It made it a lot easier. But it's like, so we have nothing. We really don't have any money. So what do? We had built this software to help run our different businesses. And I knew nothing about software, but we had hired a guy, and for several years, because we were in retail, rentals, all this. So it created a really nice software package for us. And I just got home from the walk, and I said to my wife, we're going to get in the software business. I said, like, what are you joking? Like, you don't know anything about software. And that feels very intimidating, right?
Of course.
You're a traditional entrepreneur. You left school in grade 10. Now I'm going to get into software.
Right.
And I can remember my kids. It's like, Dad, are you like, anyways, they thought I was nuts.
Yeah.
But I had no idea how to even get there.
Right.
And my wife was on Twitter. We were in bed, and she saw this thing about an accelerator program called LSpark that was happening in Canada.
Right.
That Terry Matthews was part of.
Yeah.
And she told me, and what the hell is an accelerator program? Like, I'd never even heard the name. And, but she told me, you can apply to this thing, and that doesn't cost you anything. They're going to show you how to get into the software business. You're there for 9 months. And, it's just went on and on. I'm like, man, this is exactly what I need. So, I filled in the application and I sent the information. This was their first cohort. And, I think like 300 companies or something had applied, and they were going to select 20, and the 20 would pitch to a room full of investors and VCs and all this stuff. And then they would pick who they want to become part of this thing.
Right.
So anyways, I sent in my application, and it was like 2 days before the presentation happens. It was at night again. I get an email from this guy saying, thanks for sending in your application, but try again next time. And I'm like, so I wrote him back. I said, well, his name was Marco. I said, well, Marco, I think you made a mistake. Can I come and see you tomorrow? And the pitches were happening the day after. So he said, yeah, you come and see me. I think it was 1 o'clock or something. So anyway, so he's out in Canada. Drive out to Canada, get out of the car, look at my phone. Marco's canceled the meeting. Something's come up. Okay, well, that's not good. So anyways, I look up Marco on LinkedIn, and I find his picture. And then I went in the building, and I just started looking for a guy that looked like Marco. It's Marco. Right. I found him. So I said, I'm Steve. I'm the guy you're supposed to be meeting with. And, okay. Yeah. Anyway, so we sit down, and I went through it all, and he's like, yeah, he says, I think we may have a spot. Let me go check. And so he goes and checks, and he comes back. And he's, yeah, we can get you in tomorrow. You can present. I said, well, what does this mean, present? So you need a PowerPoint presentation, and there's going to be a room like 40 people or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. I said, I got a couple of problems. I said, I have no idea how to put a PowerPoint presentation together.
Wow.
And I've never presented to a group of people in my life.
I'm waiting for you to say that you basically, the same as with the scaffolding, is that you just went to one of the presenters like a said, hey, I need your keynote.
Give me your key.
Can I have your presentation? Because
here's $20.
Yeah,
build me a slide deck.
Build me a slide deck.
Well, I got it done for free.
Of course you did.
Of course we did.
Yeah. So anyways, they said, we're going to get you a guy. And the guy ended up being a gentleman named Laurie Davis, ended up being a mentor. Great guy, and the COO of the company. So he came in, we did some pitch practicing. He put the deck together. They let me present at the end of the day. So I went in. First thing I told these guys was, I know nothing about software, but I can sell. And that was kind of the opening to my pitch.
Yeah.
So did my thing, went home. We got some Chinese food. Phone rang, and they said, you got in.
Wow.
So and there were only 2 companies that got in that year. So that was kind of our start to building the Better Software Company.
Wow. That's
what, yeah.
And that's actually, it was during those days while when we met you, you were involved in Better Software Company at the time. And I want to go, if we can, I want to just come back to Nick's passing, and you describe, for a season, what all I could do was sleep, take a bath, take a long walk. I'm a father of 3. You've got kids of your own. I can't imagine. I really just can't imagine what that must have been like for you and your wife, Natalie. Other than just the process of walking through that dark valley, were there resources? Were there people? Were there things that helped you move through that loss? Because there's people watching the show that although I can't imagine what it's like, I've lost people close to me, but not a child. There's people watching that have. What were some of the ways you moved through that?
I mean, we had tremendous support from friends, really good friends. But I don't think until you walk in those shoes, you just don't know, right? Like you just, it's hard, and you're still trying to live life. Like you're still trying to survive, and you've got 4 other kids, and how are they doing? And how's my wife doing? And, I ended up going to therapy because I could not find a way out. And, the therapist helped quite a bit, breathing exercises and, continuing with the exercise. And I can't really pinpoint. There was so much happening, and you're trying to survive that it was just really that walking that one day and deciding to look up. So was that time to process, or
right.
So I don't know what kind of, I wish I could say what got me there. They say the second year is the hardest, right? So like the first year you're in a haze, second year is hard. There's no question, because then it's like anniversaries and birthdays.
Right.
There's things happening.
And it never goes away, right?
No.
My daughter was much younger.
I know the story.
But I do know, and I remember at the time someone saying, who had also gone through the loss of their teenage son, who had said to me, it is a grief that one thing you will always be able to do is stand with others, because there's no greater grief than losing a child. And so whatever someone might be going through, you may not still understand. I had way too many people say to me, I understand how hard this must be. And it's like, no, you don't have a fucking clue.
Right.
Until you walk in those shoes.
Until you walk through those shoes. And so I've learned that is I don't understand someone's grief from where they're at, but you can at least from your place of your own grief begin to stand with people and be there with people because of that. And I think that's something certainly I see as a gift that I got from going through that experience, is how I choose to look at it, is the opportunity and the ability now to be able to stand with someone regardless of what they're going through, and at least understand pain to that level.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. It's like a club you really don't want to be in.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And yet it's amazing to me that even whatever tragedy, and there's probably no tragedy greater than losing a child, but even in the midst of terrible suffering, the good that can come out of that in time. And recently been reading a great book, highly recommend it. It's The Book of Joy, it's called. And it was an interview between the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. They spent a week in Dharamsala, where the Dalai Lama's had been in exile for 56 years. And he's asked, the whole conversation for the whole week, the author that interviewed them and then wrote the book, it was on the nature of joy in the midst of suffering. And the Dalai Lama was asked the question, for 56 years, you've been banished from your homeland. To this day, the Chinese government still impedes his movements around the world. He's still persecuted. And he goes on to talk about in the book how without that, he couldn't have traveled the world like he did. He couldn't have met the people that he's met. He couldn't have expanded his horizons the way that he did. It's amazing. Again, it doesn't diminish. The pain is still there, but it's amazing to me how the universe
just turned it around on the positive, eh?
And I think for you, you and your wife would go on to launch the Say No for Nick Foundation. Yeah. Tell us about that and tell us about that work.
Yeah, it was. So it really started before our son's passing. It started with, my son coming to the door at 6:30 in the morning and saying that he had done cocaine and he couldn't stop and he needed help. And we got in the car and we went to the Queensway Carleton. We went to the Royal Ottawa. We went to the Children's Hospital. We went to Rita Wood. We went to Dave Smith. None of them could help. And there's kind of a long story about it. Went to Pierre Poilevier's office at the time. He said, not a federal problem. Went to Lisa McLeod. She said, no problem. I'll get you help. And came back about 20 minutes later, said there is no help. And that was kind of, and so, and then, then we had the result we had. And so we went to, there was a young girl that had died in Canada, and Sean O'Leary it was at his house, and he was quite shook up, and he realized that we had the same problem. So he held a community forum out in Canada, and my wife and I at that time, we were still we had a hard time. We're still processing, and this is probably about 2 years after, and just went to the meeting, and somebody was talking about how much help there is and how easy it is to get help. And, I just stood up as a dad, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And I'm I think about a single mom. If you're I'm a dad, I've got my own business. I've got a great wife at home. I can spend the day doing this, even though, but what about a single mom? What happens to that? So I look at it from that perspective. And anyways, that really kind of got us fired up in terms of getting re-engaged and, worked a lot with a lot of different government agencies, ended up chairing a drug testing challenge. It was the first time Health Canada has ever awarded $1 million on a challenge.
Wow.
And that was for testing for fentanyl in drugs. And, so that was a very rewarding process.
Yeah.
And I remember giving the money and I cried. That was it just, I don't know. And it brought up a lot of emotion. We worked with a lot of parents because, it's just so many people struggle with this then, today. And I might even be worse today. It's really tough.
Yeah.
We kind of got we had a couple of nice events in Ottawa, the Kaleidoscope of Hope events. We'd put that on with Sharon and Tony. They were the founders of it. It was a great event. And, I remember the last one we did was a year before COVID, and I stood up to do a speech, and I was done. It was the emotion that comes out when you have to, even now, right? I probably sleep really well.
Right.
So the emotion.
Yeah, it's so it's just and I wish now I'm at the point where I wish I could do more. And I had to pull right back because you kind of have to take care of yourself, or you can't take care of anybody. So we pulled right back, and I'm still in that pulled back. I'm going to get back at it. I don't. Something will trigger it, and I right now I don't have the strength.
But isn't that beautiful though? One, that you're here today sharing your story. So on behalf of our listeners, thank you for your vulnerability. I can feel it I can see it in your eyes. I can feel it in the way that you're sharing that this is still so hard for you, but to have the wisdom to know when to step out and lead, and advocate and fight for a greater cause, and what a cause. and to know when to step back, and I need to take care of me right now.
Yeah.
I think there's people listening to this episode right now. You might be in that place where perhaps it's time for you to take a step back. The growth journey, we often are all about the step forward. I think understanding when it's time to step out of that limelight and take care of you is something that's underappreciated. And I think you've shared that beautifully today.
Yeah. Well, I referenced Janine, and that phrase has become in the last few weeks one of my favorite phrases, the season of silence. And the season of silence isn't, and when she talked about it in the episode, it wasn't what she was really referring to. Was she needed a season where she put herself into a self-imposed silence, off of social media, getting all the noise, getting out of it, all of it, to step back, to just allow herself to heal so that she could come back as that new version of who she now is, and begin to do the stuff that she's doing. And that it's such a power, and yet so many of us almost feel guilty letting ourselves go into that season of silence.
Yeah, absolutely.
We learned it. It was actually through Rita Wood. So they had a course. If you had if you're dealing with somebody who had a substance abuse issue, and that's where they said you really got to take care of yourself, or you're not going to take care of anybody. And I think that was our first big aha moment going through it. And yeah. So
how is the Steve of today different from the Steve pre-loss of your son? Like these events shape us pretty significantly. How would you say you have changed, evolved, grown as a result?
I think really reflecting and enjoying like minutes, days, and hours. Like there's, because we're running so fast that sometimes you forget to sit and just appreciate. And I think I'm much better at that than I was then, running really hard. I think I was a lot more combative before then. So if a problem came up, I'd love to duke it out.
The scrappery.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like French and Irish, I don't know.
Let's go.
Tabernacle. Now it's like, it's just, I don't know. I just let things go. Or, if there's a problem in business or a partnership issue, like I walk away. Like it's just not worth, life's too short, right? It's just not worth, I don't know, maybe you're looking for joy more.
Yeah.
Go back to your book. Maybe it's in there.
Tell you, top 3 books of the year. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Book of Joy. It's worth the read. That's beautiful.
We want to get into what you're doing now and kind of have a little bit of a focus on that for a few minutes. But maybe before we do, I don't want to shift away from this too quickly, because there may be those watching or listening who are either struggling with addictions themselves, or have are right in the midst of that, where they're sitting there and probably with tears right now hearing you share. Maybe a parent with a child where they're thinking, if I don't figure this out, I'm going to be in Steve's shoes. Maybe, even just talk to the camera, share to the listener right now. What would you share with them? What advice would you give to someone who might be listening right now and their hands kind of going up saying, that's me?
Yeah, I think probably, if somebody had we were right against drugs. So if our child would have talked about smoking marijuana or somebody else doing that, and I mean, we did it when we were young, but you grow up and I was just dead set against it. And what I came to realize through the process is, I think if somebody has a substance abuse problem, there's a reason. Right. And how do you get to the root of it? And it could be bipolar. Like a lot of people have a bipolar issue, and they're self-medicating going on. So it's really kind of looking at it, almost going around the problem and saying, like, why are they self-medicating?
Right.
So maybe it's having the person have a bunch of tests done, psychological tests, whatever it is. Right. Maybe it's some therapy. So it might not it might not be like they have to go right to rehab, like, or anyway, you've got to find out why they have the problem. I think it's important to take care of yourself first. You have to, because this will totally burn you out. I mean, I remember driving 2-3 in the morning, looking around, for my son, because you're just panicky and scared. Yeah. You've got to do with what you're comfortable. There is no silver bullet. Like people are asking all the time, what can you do? It really comes down to the person with the problem.
Yeah.
They're the ones that have to make the decision to fix the problem.
You can't carry it for them.
You just can't. And you can try to put guardrails in, try to get them around to why are they self-medicating, which is just so often the problem.
Right.
And I don't know, it's like you talk about a safe drug supply now. I'm a total advocate for it, because with fentanyl and just all the issues with all the drugs on the streets,
the risk is so high.
Yeah. In BC, you can get prescribed very powerful drugs now. And, I don't know, maybe that has to be considered. Sometimes you have to follow them on their journey, align with them till they find it's the right time. I met a man, Gord, and he's a huge advocate now, but he was, I think, a heroin addict for 40 years.
Wow.
And he was an economist, and he lived at the top of a building, in the broom closet, and he'd go to work in a suit every day. Smart man. And I was like, what got you off this? And he stole from his parents, and everybody disowned him, all the things that happened. And he said it was on his, I think it was his 60th birthday. His brother bought him a book, and he decided to read the book, and it showed him it wasn't his fault. It was something wrong chemically in his brain.
Wow.
That was having him self-medicate. Right. And that book,
wow.
Here's, somebody who's been a hardcore user
for 40 years.
Decades.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a book.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, there's so much hope. We had a guy, Josh, we helped. I think he was pronounced dead maybe 12 times.
Wow.
And we worked with him quite a bit, and great kid. And now he's studying to be a lawyer.
Wow.
And you'd look at him and you'd say, does he have a chance? But everybody has a chance.
Yeah.
Everybody has a chance.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's follow along, don't judge.
Yeah.
They don't want to be doing it either. It's there's something happening. There's a reason.
I love that, because in essence, the very definition of compassion, if you go back to the etymology of the word, is to suffer alongside. And I think, mental health issues, drug addiction, substance abuse, there's so much, and so many other things we could list, that there's so much stigma attached to it that we often want to deal with the stigma, but we're not looking at the pain that's causing it. And to your point, we got to get past
the stigma.
You're past totally the stigma, right. Past totally the presenting issue, because the presenting issue is often the symptom. It's not the root cause. And again, I love the notion of sometimes you just got to follow someone for a while. That's the very essence of compassion. Steve, powerful. You're up to some cool new things these days. Yep. And again, I admire you all the more. I've admired you from a distance since I met you back in the Better Software days. When I met you, I remember at your office in the West End, and you walked me through a really cool experience. And I admire you even more, getting to know your story even more, what you've had to overcome. And now you're doing this really cool thing with bunking.com.
Yeah.
Give us what's the elevator pitch, Mr. Salesman? What's the elevator pitch for bunking.com?
It's a marketplace that helps to connect like-minded people for shared travel, retreats, things like that. So it's, I think, post-pandemic, my son and daughter were going to go to Tofino for 3 months, and when they found out what rent would be for a short-term rental, like they couldn't afford it.
Right.
And I said, well, get some roommates, get some people sleeping on the floor on the couch and stuff. And my daughter's like, well, what about axe murders? Like, how are people going to pay?
Well, because they exist. They're out there.
But axe murderers need to sleep too.
They like to travel.
They travel.
Charge them a premium.
Right.
Yeah. So that's where the idea came from, is like, help people to connect. We've recently launched the Rent Anything store. So that's a marketplace where, you can rent anything. So that's super exciting. We're selling territories for that. And our first one is closing today. So that's in Philadelphia.
That's amazing.
And then we're getting ready to launch Helping Companions, which I think will be a really good one. And that one was just around my mother. My wife and I, we were going to kind of live half time in Mont Tremblant, half time in Costa Rica, but I was worried about, who's going to visit my mother. And she was really sick at the time, which is why we didn't go there. Yeah. So she got through it. But through the process of looking to, like, how can I find companionship for her? You can't find companionship for older people.
Yeah.
Right.
And so Helping Companions is a marketplace where we help to connect seniors with companions.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I love it. I love all the stuff that you're doing.
Yeah.
One of our favorite questions that we like to ask whenever we have a guest on the show, and we'd love to ask you this as kind of as we wrap up here, is and I know you've been a listener of the podcast,
yep.
But what does living richly mean to you?
When I look at your podcast right from the beginning, I might not answer your question, but what does this podcast mean to me? It's like,
what is living rich? What does it mean for you to live
your
richly?
Best life. Yeah. Living your best life.
Yeah.
But I think what you do, the format here is the rawness of it. Like the real, like you guys, how vulnerable you have been speaking. And I think that gives other people permission to do the same. Right. So it's not about being cool and being strong, and it's about being open and honest and vulnerable. And I think that's how we all learn.
Yeah.
So anyways, you guys have a great job. Really good job.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being on the show. In the show notes, we're going to post, we're going to get all the information from you about where people can connect with you, how they can connect with you. So we'll make that all available to our listeners for sure. Steve, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for honoring us with your story today. And we wish you all the best in all your current endeavors and future, because we know Steve's up to more in the future.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, we really do want to thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time to tune in, to listen. I don't know if you're feeling it, whether you're listening or watching this. I was feeling it today, just the emotion of the moment. If this has spoken to you today, really want to encourage you to like, to comment, and most importantly, share out this episode with others that you feel might benefit from hearing a Steve story and a little bit of his journey that he's taken. You can check out all the show notes, all the other information at livingrichlly.me, where you'll find all that information. Again, we thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you again next week.